Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The College of Engineering, University of Mosul organizes the international training course entitled The Dynamics of Qualitative and Grounded Theory in Multidisciplinary Research. Our speakers is from University Sultan Zain Al Abidin from Malaysia, which is Prof. Dr. Ahmed Fuad, and Assistant Prof. Dr. Syed Faisal from University of Sindh, Pakistan. Prof. Dr. Ahmed Fuad is Faculty of Applied Social Science, University Sultan Zain Al Abidin from Malaysia. He got PhD in tourism from UK in 2005 and Master in UK also in 1998 and his bachelor from United States. He is specialist in management, tourism, and planning. He have more than 88 publications in journal and 16 books and 150 articles in different conferences. And he supervised more than 25 PhD theses. And we have Dr. Faisal, Assistant Prof, Department of Social Work, University of Sindh, Pakistan. His PhD from USM, University Science, Malaysia. He have more than 20 publications. Our two guests specialists in methodology and especially in grounded theory and qualitative study. Many thanks to our speakers, Dr. Ahmed Fuad and Prof. Faisal. So we can start our session now. We will start with me to give overview about the methodology, qualitative methodology. Then we move to Prof. Ahmed to describe what is qualitative research, then type of data and the techniques of collecting these data. Then we move to the Q&A session, and then we start with Prof. Faisal session. He will identify the grounded theory study. Then we move to the visual representation of these results. So, Dr. Ahmed, you can start. Thank you.
As opposed to diver, they can go deep dive, which means that they can go deeper and deeper. And for example, when they go deeper and perhaps they can go to the surface of the ocean, and they will discover something that cannot be observed from the surface. So that is actually a simple analogy if you want to differentiate between what is qualitative research and what is quantitative research. So it's very much driven by your objectives, what you actually want to discover. So I don't go through exactly my slide, but you see when you study about the origin of research, whether it's quantitative or qualitative research, in academic literature, in the past, for example, in the 18th century, 17th century, in terms of discipline, the natural science actually started. I mean, their discipline was very advanced. Example, we started this, for example, discipline in physics, in chemistry, in mathematics, in medicine, for example. Before, like after a few centuries, then only the social science, research started. So actually, the origin of qualitative research very much started from social science discipline, whereby during that time, researchers, especially in the 18th and 19th century, they discovered that when you wanted to do research, it's not just about variable, it's not just about data, it's not just about numbers. Basically, for example, in the context of College of Engineering, for example, what matters is actually mostly all the numbers that matters to researchers and academicians. But from social science perspective, it's a different scenario. It's totally different. For example, when you want to study about behavior, when you want to study about feeling, when you want to study something that is that are intangible, provide meaning, ideas, perspective, and understanding, for example, that cannot be measured in numbers. Example in my area, in measure service quality, and all of us have experience as a tourist. We visit several destinations. We consume some of the services in the hotel industry. We stay in hotel. And if, for example, if you want to measure satisfaction, for example, are you satisfied with the service in the hotel? So these are something very much intangible, which means cannot be determined by numbers. So that's why it's very important sometimes that you need to find another another approach as opposed to quantitative research. So that's how qualitative research very much started and become very significant in research. So if Dr. Oda, if you go to my slide number 4, I show you this circular model of research process. So if you see the slide, there is the A, observation or description, and then B, the analysis, and C, the explanation and hypothesis. In quantitative research, before you attempt your data collection or in the beginning of your research, so you must have a very solid framework. Either your conceptual framework or your theoretical framework, and those are derived from your research objective and your research question. And then with your framework, then you create, you formulate your hypothesis and so on. You design your questionnaire, you collect data, and you analyze, and then you describe. You describe your data. That become your finding. So in quantitative research, the process is from C, B, and A. But in qualitative research, is the other way around. In purely qualitative research, you can, for example, you can observe a phenomena, you can observe a situation, you can observe a context of study without having a prior knowledge. For example, you may not have a prior theory in your mind. You observe, and then with the data that you observe, either you observe through observation, direct observation, or whether you attempt some interviews, example, and then you analyze your data, and then you give your own explanation. So that's why in qualitative research, they mention the data is very much inductive, as opposed to quantitative research is a deductive process. So it's basically, you see the difference between qualitative and quantitative research is very much are two disciplines that are actually extreme in their character, in their attributes. So what I mean is, if Dr. Oda, if you can go to my slide number 8, I show you a diagram. Okay. You see, in quantitative research, is very much straightforward. You have your framework, and then you derive from your research question and research objective, and then you have your instrument, and then you test. So it is very much straightforward. That's why in quantitative research, before you collect your data, the supervisor must make sure that the student's framework is already strong. Is proven whether you want to do exploratory research or confirmatory research. So it must be proven by previous research. But in qualitative data, it is not necessary. Actually, the true understanding of qualitative research is it is fine for qualitative research not to have a framework. So that's why there's always argument. I mean, I've been examiners of many theses, and sometimes we have we debated among examiners, because some examiners, when they have inclination of quantitative paradigm, they tend to impose quantitative paradigm into qualitative research. But in a pure qualitative research, it is actually acceptable if the thesis or if the research does not have any framework. So it is actually fine. So why I'm showing you this diagram is that in qualitative research, the process can be back and forth. You can observe, and then later you can formulate your research question, and then you collect data. But it is also possible, after you collect your data, you have your finding, you may revisit your objective, and you may do some modification to your objective to suit your data. Is that understandable, Dr. Oday, to the audience? So which means that example that after you collect your data, and you may be able to revisit your objective, and you change your objective based on the data that you have already collected. So this is actually the beauty of doing qualitative research as opposed to quantitative research. As I told you, the qualitative research is more about the depth, how deep that you want to discover. That's why actually there are so many techniques that you can employ in qualitative research. Actually, qualitative research is not only limited to anthropology, ethnography, psychology, social science, but you can also apply qualitative research in medicine. You can also apply qualitative research in engineering, in science, and in natural science and science, because there's also a need of doing qualitative research in those disciplines. Although in terms of concentration, qualitative research tend to dominate discipline in the social science, psychology, management, and so on. And Dr. Oda, if you go to my slide number 20, there are actually many qualitative data collection techniques. One of them is actually observation. This is very important in the context of ethnography study, for example. You want to study the culture of communities. And then slide number 20. And then you observe your units of analysis, which means that you observe your the behavior of your participants. And you see why it is important to have observation. Number 20, Dr. Oday. Oh, okay. Is that the one? Okay. Why observation is sometimes utilized in qualitative research? Because the respondent, some of them, they don't want to be known that they are being observed. You see, I give you example. Let's say Dr. Oday is doing an experiment of the audience of this training course. So if all the audience are being notified much early, then okay, all of you tonight participate in a survey or participate in an observation, and very likely in qualitative research is that you may tend to play a good behavior because for example, you know that you are you are part of the experiment, and then we tend to play good behavior. For example, in education, they want to see how active are the participants. So if you know that you are being observed, then a lot of you will be asking questions. So the room will be very interactive, so many questions. But in a truly observation approach, the students, they do not know, the respondent or what we call the units of analysis, they are not aware that they are being observed. So which means that they will portray their true behavior. So this is what we want actually in qualitative research, because we want to study the genuine context, the genuine phenomena. So this is actually one of the techniques, and there's some interaction, Dr. Oday. Okay, another technique is actually documents. For example, you review archive. For example, if you study history or legal statutes, if you study law and minutes of meeting, those are actually also classified under qualitative research. But the most utilized, what would I say, approach in qualitative research is interview. So interview means that you interview your respondent, whether you want to interview one-to-one or whether you want to have a focus group. So focus group means that you gather a few respondents. For example, you want to gather 10 respondents in one situation. For example, in one room, then you ask questions to the respondents. So there are pros and cons whether personal interview is more meaningful, is more beneficial as compared to a focus group. So it really depends on the situation of your research. For example, why interview is important when you want to have, for example, when you interview a very confidential situation. So you want the interviewee to reveal the story as much possible, and that's why during interviews you must make sure that they give their permission prior to the interview. That is actually very important. Then they will become more truthful. Because sometimes some interviewees they will criticize, and they are afraid if their critique become public in the publication, will be publicized in the publication, then it may affect his career. And for example, that's why we have to treat the data with confidentiality. That's why it's very important when you interview your respondent, you don't actually reveal the respondent's name in your thesis or in your report. The most you can do, for example, in your appendix, that you can just reveal, for example, respondent 1, and you put the designation. For example, he is the head of blah 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 of whatever agency or organization, but you don't put the name, because reader can crisscross can see which is which. So because we have to treat the data with confidentiality, that's why it's very important, because this is actually some of the ethics when you want to do interviews. And I have outlined here what are the types of interviews. They are actually, if you go, Dr. Odai, to slide number 25, there are semi-structured interviews, there are unstructured interviews, and there are open-ended interviews. So those are actually the three types of interviews. If you go to the next slide, Dr. Odai, the semi-structured interviews, you have your standardized interview question. It is open-ended, but you have standardized interview question. And for example, you have 20 respondents or 30 respondents. When you ask the respondent, you follow the same question over and over again. But the second one, the unstructured interview, means you only have a topic. You don't have a question, but you have a topic that you want to discover, that you want to ask your respondent. So it's very much unstructured. It's more open. And the other one, the unstructured interview, then the question is very much informal. You see, like in the unstructured, which is the most extreme interviews, you tend to have a formal conversation with the respondent without them realizing that they are actually being interviewed. So, but this one, I don't really advise our researchers or students, academicians to use this informal conventional interview, the unstructured one, unless it is really necessary. If in the context of ethnography, for example, you want to study a very specific culture, you get to know them very well before you attempt the interview. Because the reason is one of the limitations. If you use this interview, this type of interview, the unstructured one, it will take a long time as opposed to the previous two. The previous two, you have your standardized open-ended interview question. Then it will guide you to interview your respondent, your group of respondents. So it will make your life much easier. Then which means that you will be able to complete your research in a shorter time as opposed to the unstructured one. But it really depends on the context of your study. Okay. The other issue, when you want to do interviews in whatever field of study, is your ability to probe. To probe means to ask questions further. Example, if you want to do interviews, don't come up with like 20 or 30 questions. No one wants to be interviewed with 20 or 30 questions, because the purpose of doing interview is for you to go deeper. You want to go deeper into the context, into the scenario, which means that with one question, he would be able to respond in 30 minutes, 20 minutes. So imagine if you have 20 questions, then the interview may last about 5 or 8 hours. So that will be very lengthy. That will be very time consuming, and it will create boredom to your respondent. So, and then the clue is, when you want to do interviews, you cannot begin with the question of whether the answer is yes or no. So it must be driven by why and how, because you want your interview to explain further. And another tip is that when you want to do interviews, although, for example, I always advise my students, if you want to go for in-depth interviews, if qualitative research is actually your approach, so only prepare a set of questions between 5 to 10, not more than 10. For example, you only have a set of 6 questions. So that is actually your always become your guide. But each question, when you ask your respondent, when you probe further, it will generate another new question. So the 6 questions are actually meant only as a guide. But during the course of the interview, when you interview your respondent, so it will generate more questions resulting from the conversation. So that's why this is actually the beauty of the qualitative research, where sometimes you want to discover A, you want to go deeper into this issue, but somehow when you do the interviews, you will discover new phenomena, new situation, and which require deeper understanding of that situation, and which means that you may have to create you have to create more questions to understand more of the new situation. So that's actually the beauty of doing interviews and doing qualitative research. And there are actually many, but before I go about the sampling, there are actually many issues of conducting interviews as opposed to quantitative research, because interviews, in terms of the number of interviews, always students ask, how many interviews that I should conduct for my research? So this is actually a very interesting question. In qualitative research, there is no definite answer. You may interview. Okay, in qualitative research, you can interview 10 respondents, you can interview 20 respondents, you can interview 15, but in a very holistic manner, you can only interview one person. For example, you are in the field of psychology. You want to study one patient, but in a holistic manner, very comprehensive. So one person is sufficient. So actually, but the basic idea is that in qualitative research, in interviews, for example, the number of respondents is small. As opposed, for example, in quantitative research, for example, if your population is 1 million over, if you follow Craigie and Morgan formula, then you may end up having to perform survey on nearly 400 respondents, 345, 348 according to the Craigie and Morgan sample. But in qualitative research, it's the other way around. It is very small, but the issue is some students, they do not know when to stop. Okay, you have interviewed, for example, 15 respondents, and then you want to interview another one. Then it becomes 16. If you use the snowball sampling, and then the 16 respondent will introduce you to another respondent. Then you interview respondent number 17. But then you are wondering, when should I stop? Should I stop at number 17, or should I stop at number 20, or should I have already stopped much earlier? So actually, what is actually the formula in qualitative research, especially in interviews? You can go to slide number 31, Dr. Uday. It's actually, in qualitative research, as I mentioned to you, there is no typical answer. You can interview 20, you can interview 15, you can interview 30, but don't interview that many, you know, because analyzing qualitative data is very time consuming. You imagine, but I will not be sharing with you how to analyze data, qualitative data today, because they might be, that might take a long time. But example, 1 hour of interview, if you interview one respondent for 1 hour, and if you want to transcribe the data, which means if you want to write in verbatim the conversation in text, which means that you have to type, you have to listen, and you have to type in verbatim what are the conversation word by word. It will give you about 10 pages of verbatim text. And you see, 1 hour of data, 1 hour of interview, if you want to transcribe, which means if you want to write in verbatim the conversation by listening to you have to record the conversation. If you listen again to the audio, then it will take you between 8 to 10 hours for 1 hour of interview. So it's actually very time consuming. That's why we don't advise students or researchers to interview many respondents in qualitative research. So small number is enough, but as I told you, when to stop, this is actually very important question. When in qualitative research, it mentioned is when theoretical saturation has been achieved. So what does it mean by theoretical saturation or redundancy? When there are no new insights emerge from your respondent responses. I give you example. When you interview respondent number 15, and then you interview respondent number 16, because of the snowball sampling, respondent number 15 introduce you to another respondent. So you make appointment to see respondent number 16, and you do another interview. And then when you interview respondent number 16, you find that whatever he said, not much different from the previous 15 respondents. More or less, what he said is similar. I mean, he mentioned about this topic, that topic, which has already been touched by the previous respondent. Then it gives you an indication that you can stop. So even if you want to attempt another respondent number 17, and when you interview and you find that this 16 and 17 respondents, they don't give you new views or new opinion, then you can decide that you can stop. So how you justify in your research or in your thesis, in your report, you can say that initially, for example, I want to interview 10 respondents, but I eventually interviewed 17. And why I stop at 17 when I have already reached the data saturation. So that's actually the clue for you is when to stop. So I just share you my last slide is about the sampling strategies. Is that there are many sampling strategies like snowball, convenient, extreme, typical. You can Google further. What does it mean? Convenient means that it really depends on the convenience of the respondent. Typical means you want to go for typical cases. Extreme means you want to see the extreme behavior. You don't want to go for the average, but you want to go for the extreme cases. Maximal variation means that you want to differentiate between the for example, case that is very high, then the case that is very low. I'll give you example. For example, maximal variation in terms of COVID 19, for example. The maximal variation in terms of high now, USA is actually is the worst country that was affected by COVID. And then you may compare with, for example, Iraq, because I noticed from the data that Iraq was not badly affected by this COVID. Even in the context of Middle East or Central Asian countries, I mean, the cases in Iraq is very much contained, very good. Then that's what I mean by maximal variation. You compare between one case that is actually very bad and then one case that is very good. So this is actually what it means by some of the sampling strategies. Okay, Dr. Odai, I finished my slides. This is actually, as I mentioned by Dr. Odai earlier on, this is just an overview. Hopefully in future, if we have opportunity, we can share, we can go very deep in each particular topic of the qualitative research. This is just to give an idea what is qualitative research is about. So thank you very much. I'm passing back my session back to Dr. Odai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for this overview. I know the qualitative study is more deeper than this, but because the time and also your time now, I think 3 a.m. in another day. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
So actually, I tried the qualitative research, qualitative methodology in 2 or 3 in my research, but I find it is more difficult than the quantitative, even in collecting data and analyzing these data. You know, my research sometimes is connected to the user's behavior, like in interior design or in urban planning. So sometimes it's we need to use the qualitative, but most of us in architecture, we use like mixed methodology. We design our methodology. So thank you so much. And now we can open the Q&A. So if everyone have any question in Arabic or in English, in Urdu, or in Malay, he can ask his question, and our guest, Prof. Ahmed Fuad, he can answer. So the question now, if we have any question about the qualitative, actually I have one question from my side.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, Doctor. You know, in the qualitative, sometimes it's not a question. Sometimes they told me that qualitative study is not very qualified like quantitative. This I want to know, this is true or not, or I can choose my methodology like from the beginning, like I want to make qualitative research. It's possible, or this depends on the problem statement or hypothesis?
Can you repeat again your question, Dr. Odai?
Yeah. Sometime my friends, they told me that qualitative research is not qualified like quantitative research. This is the first point. And another point is the researcher can choose his methodology from the beginning, or it depends on the problem statement or objective or the research question.
Okay. But if they say that qualitative research is not qualified, which means that it lacks the competence. Is that what the researchers mean?
Yeah. Like in architecture, we use the qualitative research, but some, you know, they normally we use number, the statistical. That means the quantitative study, not qualitative study. So, but I know that if the research is linked with the human behavior or the users of the place, that means you should go for qualitative or for the mixed method. So
yeah, okay. But if the researcher's opinion is that qualitative research is not qualified because if they are debating the competency of qualitative research, that is not true, because in academic research, qualitative research is as important as quantitative research. So it really depends, as I told you earlier on your problem statement, on your objectives, and also really depends in the context of your studies. If you want to dig deeper, if you want to probe further, so for example, the qualitative research will be more appropriate. So, but normally there are actually many ways in research. There are many research when, for example, one example is that they do qualitative research as the major tool, major approach in the research. But then it is supported by quantitative research.
okay, Doctor, thank you. So if we have another question.
Okay.
If we have another question from the participant, if they have something to say, so they can open your mic and speak. In Arabic, no problem, we will translate. No question? Okay. So maybe in the end of our session, maybe there's some question that will coming up. So thank you again, Doctor, for joining us for this session.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, and you are welcome in our university virtually. Inshallah, we'll meet you in the existing world. Okay. So now we will move to our next session with Dr. Prof. Dr. Faisal. So Dr. Faisal.
Yes, Dr. Uday.
Okay, so you can proceed.
So basically, Prof. I had described quite comprehensively. There's nothing much left for me.
It's okay, Doctor. So you can
go
for the
okay.
For one of type of this qualitative research, so about the grounded theory, which is basically also we use it in our research if we want to create a theory, especially for philosophy thing. Okay, so Doctor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Uday. If we can move to the slide. Yes, actually, we'll start from what is grounded theory research. The term grounded theory refers to a theory that is inductively derived or developed from the corpus of data. Grounded theory, as we can see in the slide, that was originated from the work of two American sociologists, Bardeen Glacier and Anselm Strauss. Their collaboration in research has led them to write a book named, initially they write a book, Awareness of Dying, in which they have developed a constant comparative method, which ultimately, after the publication of the discovery of grounded theory, was known as a grounded theory method. So this was how it came into being. These are both of the books, Awareness of Dying and The Discovery of Grounded Theory. Can we move to the next? Next. We'll come back to this later. Can we move to the third slide? Okay, defining grounded theory. As I've mentioned, that it's an inductive approach to generating substantive theory, that is grounded theory in the data, to set aside theoretical ideas in order to let the substantive theory emerge. Theory focuses on how individuals interact with the phenomena under the study. In grounded theory method, the researcher focuses on studying social processes and phenomena through finding the context of discovery that highlights the knowledge of structural and contextual components in which a researcher subject is embedded. So, this is more of researching a process. So the number 4, the theory asserts a plausible relationship between concepts and sets of concepts. So it develops the concepts and plays in between them. There's a theory derived from the data acquired from the fieldwork, interviews, observation, and documents. So there is no external theory. The theory drives or is derived from the corpus of data. The data analysis in grounded theory is systematic and begins as soon as the data is available in all the versions of grounded theory, because I didn't mention that grounded theory has more than 3 versions. We'll talk later about that versions because it will be more lengthy to talk about the versions. Next slide, please. Well, the analysis proceeds through identifying categories and connecting them. Further data collection or sampling is based on the emerging of the concepts, and even the sampling method is interesting, and we'll talk later about that. The concepts developed through constant comparison with additional data. As we move to the next slide, we can see, but don't move to the next slide, Uday. The data collection, don't move, stay here. The data collection can stop when no new conceptualization emerges. Okay, if we have moved. Okay. The data analysis proceeds from open coding by identifying categories, properties, and dimensions to exile coding, the next phase of coding. By it is a mode to grouping categories, and through selective coding, the clustering around categories, and then we move to the theoretical coding. The resulting theory can be reported in a narrative framework or a set of propositions, or as a causative model base, which we'll talk about later in the end. GT is an external studying for the processes and exploring new research areas, as we have mentioned earlier. Now we can move to the next slide. So this is the constant comparative method, and as we can see here, that as soon as we collect the data from the corpus of data, which is the interviews, transcripts, field notes, documents, we make an open coding category. We made some indicators, codes, categories. So it is we try to compare the data initially to the end. The constant comparison method continues throughout the grounded theory. Can we move to the next? Basically, this is a systematic, repetitive, and iterative process, mining rich data, actions, events, processes, driven by the research problem or question. As Prof already mentioned, that qualitative data is driven by the research problem and research question. Gaps identified during initial data analysis, questions which the current data are not adequate to address are tried to answer by developing a theory that understands and explains the phenomena. Can we move to the graph of iterative process? Actually, in grounded theory, as Prof already mentioned, that it is a back and forth method. You collect the data, you code it, you prepare the memos, and you again collect the data, code it, memo it, and you constantly compare the data. Can we move to the next? Actually, if you can see the process after the first interviews, as we have mentioned in the previous iterative process and constant comparative method, so here we can understand quite comprehensively that after the first interview, the preliminary categories emerge, and after that we move to the second interview, and then we refine the categories. And after that, we move to the third interview, and the categories are more refined, and we, sometimes reach to the close to the saturation and towards saturation of categories. Can we move to the next? Now, there are different modes when to use grounded theory. Is it moved or? Yes, it is. So, when to use grounded theory? When we have to explain a phenomena, for example, about leadership, bullying, success, disability, discrimination, racism, or any other thing, or to examine an experience of living with some issues like, this is the best time to use grounded theory in times of COVID-19. So, living with the issue, living with the COVID-19, it's a process. So, it's the best time to even use a grounded theory and do research on the COVID-19. And, there are other experiences like attachment, homeliness, to understand actions, events, and the process. Even in most of the architectural and designing research, we tend to, understand or involve ourselves in the colonial architecture or in the Chinese or Arabian architecture or Islamic architecture. So, this is all about understanding the action, events, or processes that is going to happen or happening or happened in the past. So, features of grounded theory research, it's open-ended. Of course, it's a qualitative inductive, so it's open-ended. Normally, it starts with how, what, and why questions. Can we move to the next, Dr. Uday? I know there's too much time, I think, in Malaysia, and the date has changed. So there are the characteristics of grounded theory. Grounded theories, theorists should have no preconceived ideas. This is the basic point I would like to stress and mention here, because most of the qualitative researchers and even the laymen alike, confuse themselves regarding the usage of grounded theory. So the researchers has to, bracket themselves about their background and prior knowledge. There is no any literature review allowed prior to the study or to start the study, as we do in most of the qualitative and quantitative researches. But, in some cases, the founders, Barney Glacier and even Anselm Strass, have allowed for PhD researchers or MPhil and PhD researchers to do some shallow literature review prior to the study, but not to the main, context or contents to the study. So, no application of existing theories basically the idea is to generate a theory from the corpus of data. So the grounded theorists never take any of the theory, except I forgot in the previous slide about the symbolic interactionism. So, Dr. Uday, can we go to the third slide? I forgot to mention about the relationship of grounded theory with the symbolic interactionism, because this will be a more interesting thing for in the field of designing research and architecture. Then we'll come back to this again. So most of I will come to this chart later, but I'll define a bit of symbolic interactionism first. That Bardi Glacier and Enselmenstrasse had, big association with George Herbert Mead's foundation, which he led the foundation in 1934. The intellectual foundation of symbolic interactionism approach, and they were very much inspired. And why they were inspired? Because after that, to tell you more about symbolic interactionism, later Herbert Blumer continued Mead's work and coined the term symbolic interactionism. What is symbolic interactionism? Symbolic interaction sees the meaning as arise in the process of interaction between people and focuses on the interaction between individuals. According to Blumer and his theory of symbolic interactionism, the symbolic interactionism rests on three premises. The first premise is human beings act towards things on the basis of the meaning that the things have for them. Means the human being act towards the things what they mean. And the second premise is the meaning of such things is derived from or arise out of the social interaction that one has with the things. When people interact with the things, they give the meaning according to their interaction with the things. In the third premises, these meanings are handled and modified through an interpretive process used by a person in dealing with the things he encounters. So the people who use the things, who interact with the things, give their own meanings to the things. So it's according, as a qualitative researcher, whatever we see, every person or every individual has a different perspective of seeing things. So if we now come to this symbolic interactionism model, when an individual defined situation, he close in contact with reference groups. As they interact with the reference group, he knows the world and develop their own perspective and action. So this is, how the symbolic interaction works, and this is how the symbolic interaction works with the grounded theory method. So when we do when we do grounded theories, we use this meta theory of Herbert Blumer of symbolic interactionism to know the different perspectives of people in that process of phenomena. So Dr. Uday, can we move to the characteristics of grounded theory? Yes.
Thank you.
So we were on the, I think the second, analysis should be data driven. Yes, analysis should always be data driven. In grounded theory, rich data is sought to fill the gaps in the initial analysis, actively searching for data to test categories and potential theories, conducting theoretical sampling, and the theorists should use constant comparative method as suggested earlier by grounded theorists, that consistently we have to use constant comparative method throughout the data collection and analysis. And then again, we have to, if you move to the next slide, one of the most important thing as we all go through, because as we mentioned, this is an iterative process and we have to go back and forth. So memoing is the most important thing in grounded theory. So write about anything which is important to the data, whatever your thoughts, even the founders, Buddy Glass, once said that even when a researcher sleeps, he thinks in his dreams about the data. So whatever, even you have to have a pen and copy, and whatever you are thinking, you should put it on the note and you should memorize it. So throughout process during data collection and analysis, the memoing should continue, and you should also, when a person is doing research, he, as Glaser said, he all the time thinks about his research. So what he should do, whatever thoughts he's coming across, he should define or try to define by himself and to write it. So it will help ultimately when you develop a theory or when you write a theory, these memos will help you to develop and write your theory. And whatever you experience in the field, just write it in the memo. Attain saturation, reaching a stage where no new data warrants an adjustment to categories is the basic of qualitative data, and I think is the most important thing even in grounded theory, that saturation is must. When you constantly comparing categories, theories with the abundance of data, this abductive inferences with the observation, you seek to find the simplest of conclusions in the data. So you have to, try to attain the saturations. Now, again, as Prof mentioned that when you want to attain the saturation, there are some limitations as well. There are limitations of time, there are limitations of, the person you are collecting interviews. You may have to go again and again to the same person because he is giving you the more and more insights. So, though this is more, complicated procedure, and you have to have a good relationship with your respondents firstly, then it's like we say that it's very different from traditional saturation and qualitative data, and we have mentioned. Next. This data collection strategies. Of course, the data collection strategies comprise of many strategies like interviews, intensive interviews, but not interrogative interviews. It asks only open-ended questions, give participants space to share their experience, like in the previous slide I've mentioned, that you have to develop a rapport with the participants so that they can share. And even one of in one of the versions of Sharmazian version of grounded theory, which is also to be known as the constructive design of Cafe Sharma, she emphasizes, that the data is co-constructed by the researcher and the respondent. So she gives more weightage to the respondent. She even the theory which is emerges through this grounded theory, Sharma always advocates that this is the co-constructing theory constructed by the researcher and the respondent. So you have to give participants space so they can freely ooze out whatever they are feeling, emphasize with them, make good relationship with them, actively involve them in conversation, never, never to engage or some sort of a things as we nowadays, in the age of smartphones and mobile phones. Often I've seen researchers doing interviews and actively involving or fubbing their phones and using their phones during this data collection procedure. So never to do these such things. And one more thing is, if you go to the next slide, which is also very important, and when we study the processes, this is more sort of ethnographic. You use observation to decide what to observe, what are you looking for, what is your objective, what is your research question, and what exactly you are looking for. You have to observe carefully, observe over or participate in their activities, daily routines, with no little intrusion. Take extensive notes, as I already said, field notes, which could be, what you see, what you think is going on in the situation or in the context. So it's, it's very important to take seriously the observation. And of course, to the next slide, as we can see, the buildings, notes, archaeological sites, libraries, you have documents, artifacts, the data, bundles of data for assessing, there's so much in the graphics, places you can document, you can note down, even you can memo them, situations that led to development of the document, intent, audiences, everything. Whatever you can collect, you have to collect, and that will, ease up the process of your data analysis. Can we move to the next? Now, the data analysis involves examining underlying meaning of data, reducing data to abstract concepts, summarizing data, things that when conducting a grounded theory analysis, be open to multiple interpretations of the data. Never be stuck on some place or never be biased. Be open to multiple interpretations of the data. This is the, beauty of qualitative research, and this is, wonderful opportunity to interact and, get the interpretation of, the multiple interpretation of the data. Be flexible as long as you can, so you can look for leads and answers. Note that language is used to express ourselves, multiple realities, multiple expressions. You have to, understand body language of the respondents, of the surroundings. Can we move to the next? Now, today we are just having this Straussian systematic design, which was developed by Strauss and Carbon. So we are following this systematic grounded theory, and we have a reason to follow that thing as well, because in most of the grounded theory researches, systematic grounded theory is the prominent or number one theory which has been used in most of the grounded theory researches, as it is more rigorous approach and has a rigid process of analysis. So there is a three-way coding, three main coding stages of this Straussian method of grounded theory, which is open coding, exile coding, and selective coding. So we'll start from the open coding. What does we do in open coding? Of course, there are time limitations. We cannot go too much in detail, but the open coding procedure is a part of analysis that deals with identifying, naming, categorizing, and describing phenomena in the text. Well, the purpose of this first analytical step is to identify categories of the data and their related properties, dimensions. This actually method of open coding breaks down the data to discrete parts, closely evaluates and compares for similarities and differences. It further, Strauss and Carbon have suggested that events, happening, objects, and actions and interactions that are found to be conceptually similar in nature or meaning are grouped under abstract term categories. And in the second part of this coding procedure, we have exile coding. What we do actually in exile coding, that it's a process of relating codes, categories and properties to each other and exploring the relationships of categories and makes connection between them. The purpose of exile coding is to begin the process of resembling data, which is actually fractured during the open coding, and procedurally exile coding is to act of relating categories and subcategories along the lines of their properties and dimensions. The interesting fact, I remember the interesting fact about the development of exile coding in the third edition of their book of Carbon and Strauss, in which they have mentioned that there is hardly any difference between open coding and exile coding. So mostly when we do grounded theory, we often confuse ourselves that is it we are at the open coding procedure or we are at the exile coding procedure. So the things are complicated somehow, but you have to, go through the procedures. So if we go further on to the third category, third coding procedure, which is selective coding, is the final stages of coding procedure that involves the theory to develop. This stage may also involve writing a story or narrative that describes the interrelationship among categories. As the founders, Strauss and Carbon, defined the selective coding is the process of selecting the core category systematically relating to the other categories, validating those relationships and filling in the categories for further refinement for the development of the theories. As we go on to the next slide, Dr. Uday. Yeah, here we can say, or we can see that what we were talking about in the selective coding, I'll again repeat, the process of selecting the core category, systematically relating it to the other categories, validating those relationships, and filling in the categories that need further refinement and development. So that is what we are actually on the left side of your screen. You can see open coding categories that were developed in the open coding procedures, and the context in the exile coding paradigm. You put one category, that is the core category, into the core category phenomena you're studying. You attach the causal conditions, intervening conditions, you strategize, and then you lead to the consequences or the results. If you can see the next slide, which is more relatable because it was actually taken from a conflict study that shows that causal conditions were the conflict factors. The contextual conditions which were developed in exile coding was project characteristics. The phenomena was conflict event. It is a conflict study. So we're just taking the example. So intervening condition was the government's and local government's reaction. The strategies were the main agent's action, and the consequence, the result was a conflict result. So if we go again to the next slide. So actually, if we can explain further, in Straussian grounded theory, we have a broad causative model or the paradigm that discusses the causal conditions, phenomena, context, intervening conditions, actions, interactions, strategies, and consequences. Again, this is the more important thing, and if we, have the time, we will conduct in vivo session as well. These are the graphs, the visual representation that how we can use these qualitative softwares, because as you know, the qualitative study, as Prof said, that if you collect more and more data, he just described that how much time it takes, you know, if the interview is more than an hour, to describe or transcribe the interview. So the data actually piles up too much, and there's too much data to analyze manually, and it takes you know 6 months to a year to just analyze these are 2 to 3 procedures. So what we can do in this modern age, that we can take help from the, you know, these qualitative softwares, that is Atlas TI or NVivo, or we can use the simple word chart or Excel chart. Now if we stay on the same slide, Dr. Uday, NVivo slide. So this is the, on your left is the word tree, you know, developed from the corpus of data, and the right side is the word cloud. So these are only a few of the, you know, visible graphics that we can develop by using NVivo. There are lots of things you know, we can play with, and it's very interesting, as I use the word playing with the data. So actually the researcher has to take an interest. If you are a qualitative researcher, you have to take interest in your data, and only then you can be able to find out new things from the data. So there are so many things in NVivo. You can categorize, you can subcategorize, you can have dimensions, you can have properties, you can bifurcate the data, and it's easy to bifurcate the data. Just select go to the interviews, upload the interviews, and you can select the data and put it into, you know, to the similar categories, and you can trace even the data. The data traceability is very important in, you know, qualitative research. So you can always trace the data if you use these qualitative softwares. Now we can move to the next slide. So I'll suggest to use NVivo. It is more rich and has the you know, very rich graphics. But you can also use Atlas TI. If you're doing some, you know, most of the people in qualitative studies, they use Atlas TI to do their literature reviews or manage their literature reviews. And you can also use this smart Word document, which is easy to use in the Word, and you can have these slides, mind mapping, and everything you want to do with this. Thank you, Uday. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Do we have extra slides, or you're finished?
No, already finished, Doctor.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you.
The house is open, right?
What?
The house is open for Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. So now, thank you, Dr. Faisal and Prof. Ahmed, for this interesting topic. I know it's very difficult to understand if someone starts from the zero with the grounded theory or a qualitative. It is, I think it's, for me, it's more difficult than quantitative, because it's collecting data is different, analyzing data is different. It takes time, and I have experience with this. So now we can open. I think I will open the chat now for if maybe someone want to write a question, or they can open the mic and ask question directly.
دكتور عدي تسمح لي شوية؟
Yes, we have Prof. Dr. Bayar, the Dean of College of Engineering, with us now.
نعم.
Dr.
نعم. السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم.
السلام.
thank you, Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Saeed Faisal, for your very interesting representation about qualitative research methods and data collection and analysis. Thanks for joining us in our workshop program. And we look for more scientific collaboration in the future, inshallah. You are always welcome. Thank you again.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Doctor. So now, if we have any question, or Dr. Ahmed, you can open the mic. Dr. Faisal, also, if you want to open the camera or the mic, as you want. So, I will open the chat also. So, if we have any question, please just open your mic and ask any question you want, in Arabic, in Malay, in English, in Urdu. Okay, Dr. Faisal and Dr. Ahmed, I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Uday, please.
Yeah. In our research in architecture, we use to analyze the shape. You know, like we make visual observation for the shape. This is considered from the qualitative study.
Prof. Ahmed is going to answer, or
as you like.
Okay. What you have said is that you said that images,
yes,
or something. Yes. Of course, you know, it is visual representation of any sort of data. You can interpret in your own sense what you, as I have mentioned, the symbolic interactionism. This is where symbolic interactionism, you know, works in this qualitative and grounded theory very well. That it is you, how you perceive the data, how this is your perspective, how you actually, what you look in the data. So you can use it, you know, the qualitative, even the help of symbolic interactionism while analyzing or while studying these artifacts or images or graphs. You can do in qualitative as well.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to respond, Dr. Ujai?
Yeah,
Yes.
Prof, I need your expert opinion also.
Okay, I have similar views as Dr. Faisal. So, for example, if you see an image of a graphic or design, if for example, if your intention is actually to measure the image, for example, the size, then it becomes quantitative. But if you want to interpret the image in terms of the meaning, for example, an image can become so abstract. So it will give different interpretation from one person to another. So it becomes very much intangible. It becomes very much subjective. So because how I perceive the image might be different from how Dr. Uday perceives, and also different from other person. So then it becomes qualitative. For example, a color, a red color can signify bravery for one person. It means that color of red is very brave. But for a different culture, red is something different, a different connotation. So as mentioned by Dr. Faisal, it's very much abstract, it's very much symbolic. So it can be done by both paradigms depending on what you want to achieve actually.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. It's clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think I will read from the chat if there is any question. Okay. So there is a question. Okay. There is a question.
I think you have to mute the mics first.
Yeah, okay. I will mute for all. Okay. So,
Yeah. If you are going to read from the chat, so it's better to mute the mics.
Okay. They ask about the in vivo. Yeah, they want a training course about the in vivo software for the qualitative analysis. Okay, and
so for that, I have already offered my services. If you provide or if you have access to the license or whatever software, we can decode it, we can use it, and we can have a training on in vivo as well.
Okay. So another question is, can we use qualitative method? Then in the analysis we convert to quantitative. I mean, they present the results of the qualitative method as a quantitative, like chart, or if you use the observation, they convert it to the numbers. So it can be in qualitative.
Yes, the data triangulation is very much possible. If you triangulate the data, you use collective data and use also this qualitative data, and you also use quantitative data. So you can use the graph, the observation, whatever research you are doing. If you're doing quantitative, you can use the documents, the data you have in quantitative, drawn from the qualitative, or you can use also the graphs and other things in a qualitative study, from the quantitative study as well. The data can be used.
Dr. Ahmed, you have any? Prof. Ahmed?
It can be done, which means qualitative data can be presented in a quantitative manner. It is possible, although it is not necessary.
Not necessary. Okay. So, Doctor, we know the qualitative data every time it's more bigger than the quantitative. The quantitative data can be in tables. It's very easy, but in the qualitative, it's take like 100 pages. So how we can reduce these?
So if you present your data in manual form, which means that you don't use software like NVivo or SLCI, then it will make your thesis very thick, very lengthy, because it involves a lot of data interpretation, data judgment, because you have to include the quotation from the respondent. But the software actually tends to simplify your presentation, and it will make your presentation more interesting because it has some graphics.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I have another question. Yes, about the Doctor. When we sent our paper or research to the journal, especially the Scopus and this Clarivate journal, in the qualitative study, there is like rehabilitation and validation for the data. So this is very difficult to include it in our research, to send it to the journal. We can include it in the research, or we can like send it to the journal like in separate sheet or separate file. Or there is validation for the data, or reliability for the data in the qualitative.
There is, Dr. Uday, you can include that in the methodology, and then you explain how you perform reliability of your data. You see, because in qualitative research, it involves a lot of data interpretation. So it's very important, for example, that you establish some kind of reliability, so that what you call the panel, when they evaluate the reviewer, when they evaluate your paper, that they know that when you interpret your data, there is no element of biasness and so on. So you can establish that element of reliability and validity. You can explain that in your methodology. So that is part of a section that you need to include in your methodology section in your thesis concerning reliability and validity.
Yes, Dr. Uday, I will add more about this. I think in most of the PhD theses in qualitative research, now we tend to use this trustworthiness of the research. And in many journals also they ask about the trustworthiness of the research, the credibility, transferability, even generalizability, which was known to be a quantitative, earlier it was being used, the generalizability was being used in a quantitative studies. But now people tend to ask that if this data is generalizable. Of course, the dependability, conformability is there, but the data is, my answer is that data is always generalizable, but to the context it is drawn from. Whatever context it is drawn from, the data is generalizable only to that context and only to that, situation or a universe.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I think we will take the last question from Dr. Muhammad from the Humanities Schools. He wants to know which is the best way to make validity for the interview. There is anything to validate the data that collected from interview? The best way, I think he means. Dr. Faisal or Dr. Ahmed, you can ask this question. This is our last question for today.
So, sorry if Prof is not answering, or I'm answering this question. Yeah, it is important to validate, your interviews, and how you can validate is, there are so many things that, how in the methodology section you process the data, how you record the data, and which recording methods you use, to validate the data. Is that what you mean to ask, Dr. Uday?
I think he mean after he transcript the voice to
yes.
He should go to the interviewee to take his
yeah, of course,
like
of course, there is a procedure, ethical procedures, that whatever you transcribe from the interviewee, you have to come up with a transcription, and you have to ask, and you have to present him that he should validate whatever he said or he doesn't say it. He should validate, because it is the actual thing and a must thing in an ethical consideration. We must do this practice to validate the data. You must go to the interviewee and just make sure that he agrees with your transcription as well.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. If you have any comments.
And one more thing, you know, for the record keeping and other things, you must take his initial or signature also on this transcription as well. As in most of the, you know, PhDs in Vivas, they ask this question: that have you validated your interviews? Have you asked? When you have transcribed, do you went to the interview and asked that this is what you have said? So this is an important thing to keep all the record with yourself. Never to lose a record. This is the only thing you can trace your data.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I don't know if Dr. Ahmed have any comment.
It's already answered by Dr. Faisal.
Okay, thank you. So I have a last question for you, Doctor, because he sent me in the private message about the subjectivity of the interview. That mean he mean like if the researcher do the interview and he analyze this interview, this means he make it by himself. So I think the answer is about the reliability, right? Should we use the reliability and validity?
Yes, I think I've already touched. When you already interpret your data, as mentioned by Dr. Faisal, the first step is that you validate your data with the respondent to make sure that whatever that you have transcribed is the same as what is meant by the respondent. That is one stage. Another stage is that when you want to interpret your data, you may appoint a few experts to check whether your interpretation is the same as what you interpret. Because sometimes when you interpret a data, it can lead to different meaning by a different person. So you must make sure that the interpretation is the same, is correct. That's why there is also an element of reliability in qualitative data analysis. Hello?
Yes, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor, for the answering. I think the two methods, the qualitative and the quantitative, because the quantitative also, when we separate the questionnaire or survey, it's also need to validate, because maybe the researcher do it by self or just give it to some people, and then he get the answers or the biasing in the data, because the validation is very important. I think you faced something like this, Dr. Ahmed, with in the some examiner for the thesis.
Yes.
Yeah, because every time this happen, so the two sides depend on the researcher. If the researcher be honest, he can do the right thing. Okay. If we don't have any questions, so we can say thank you for Dr. Faisal and
thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, and sorry, Dr. Ahmed, because now I think you already will go for suhoor. Now it's already.
So happy suhoor, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you.
Not yet, Doctor. For us, we have time, but for you, I think you have just only 1 hour for the Fajr. So thank you so much. And
Salamat malam, Dr. Prof.
Yeah, thank you.
Salamat malam, Doctor.
You were from USM before, yes, Dr. Faisal?
Yes, I met you, Prof, over there.
Okay. You know my student Sir Akbar?
I think I have met with him also.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you. And this is because this is our last training course. We start before 2 months, and this is the 48th training course, online training course, and this is the last one for this season. So inshallah, when we start another season, if we have, because we have requests many times for the methodology in depth and for research, I mean for the literature review also, and we have for in vivo. So maybe inshallah we invite you for another session in the next season, inshallah, after Eid.
Inshallah.
Most welcome, anytime.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Doctor. And I will send you the certificate for you for as a speaker and a lecture for this session, inshallah, to your email. It's already with me. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sauman Makbulan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, and Saum Makbul, inshallah. We so happy for your lecture. It's very nice. Thank you, and we will wait you in another lecture in future. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Assalamualaikum.
مع السلامة.
دكتورة خولة، إذا أكو ما خافت
ما أعرف إذا أكو سؤال، إذا أكو أي سؤال، حتى إذا لا ننهي يعني القاعة خلاص ننهي المحاضرة.
ما عندي شيء أنا، يعني بس أخاف أكو أحد يسأل على
بالضبط. هو لو أكو أي أحد سؤال، حتى لو سؤال بالعربي ماكو مشكلة، ممكن يعني يترجم يعني.
لا أنا قصدي خاف عندهم شغلة بالاستمارة.
بالاستمارة ما مشكلة، هاي أنا بعدين أخلي الضيوف مالتنا يطلعون بعدين. ماشي. Thank you, Dr. Faisal. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay. أحد عنده سؤال على مود الاستمارة أو على مود التسجيل أو أي شيء آخر يعني فيما يخصنا؟ فقط يعني إن شاء الله يروحون المحاضرين مالتنا ونبدي نجاوبكم عليها، ماكو أي مشكلة. دكتور عدي, it's okay?
Okay.
We will finish
already finished.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Faisal. خلاص دكتور عدي الشهادات السيرتيفيكيت we will send it with دكتور عدي.
Okay.
ست العفو. بس السلام عليكم دكتور عدي، شلونكم؟
وعليكم السلام.
حياكم الله ست. بس اليوم ست مليانة بدون ما كان بأسئلة، يعني اكو لو اني غلطان ما كان اكو أسئلة مثل بقية الأيام.
لا ما كان اكو بيها أسئلة، فقط لازم تكتب الاي دي اللي دخلت بيه على هذه
هاي ما بشي، هذا شغلة معروفة ست.
بالضبط، لأنه هذه حتى نعمل، لأنه أنا دا أسوي مقارنة، اللي ما عنده ما مدخل الاي دي مالته ما موجود ما أبعث له شهادة، لأنه صارت عندنا إشكالية التسريب يعني.
لا هاي حقيقة اكو شغلة أخرى يعني بس المعلومات مليانة، لأنه الاسم بالإنجليزي، فأنا مليت عربي وإنجليزي، يعني مثلا الجامعة كتبت عربي
يعني ما مشكلة، المهم الاسم بالإنجليزي حتى الشهادة تصلك بالإنجليزي، لأن هاي السيرتيفيكيت راح تكون بالإنجليزي.
أوكي شكرا، بارك الله فيكم.
أهلا وسهلا. أكو أحد عنده شيء؟ أعتقد ماكو شيء، راح نقفل القاعة دكتور عدي. ماشي، شكرا جزيلا، شكرا للحضور. فقط راح نقول لكم انه هاليوم اخر دورة إلنا من الوجبة الثانية اللي هي يعني وجبة رمضان خلينا نسميها. ان شاء الله يا رب نكون ادينا اللي علينا، يا رب تكون محاضراتنا كانت مفيدة بالنسبة لكم بالنسبة للحضور، وما أعرف يعني مستقبلا إذا الأمور صارت أوكي يعني ممكن نستمر بهذا الموضوع. شكرا جزيلا لحضوركم ولمتابعتكم، ونعتذر عن أي تقصير. شكرا عيني دكتور عدي. نقفل القاعة. تمام.
شكرا دكتورة خولة على هذا التعب، صراحة صار لكم شهرين بهاي الدورات ما شاء الله.
والله الكل الجروب الجروب
والله
كله
الكل طبعا.
الجروب كله بما فيهم انت، يعني تعبت ما شاء الله، الفيديوهات الكل يعني ما حد قصر. دكتور بيار ما قصر معنا، بالعكس دائما دعمه وجوده. حقيقة انا اول واخر واحد، اكثر واحد اشكره دكتور بيار، لانه كثير دعمنا، كثير دعمنا.
شكرا دكتور، شكرا دكتور عدي، شكرا كل الكادر اللي كان معاكم، شكرا جزيلا، ما قصرتم وبارك الله فيكم وبيضتم وجهكم. شكرا
والله
جزيلا
دكتور يعني والله العظيم بدعمك جديات، يعني الله يحفظك. يعني ايش قلنا لك؟ قلت ايه للامانه، ايش طلبنا ما قلت لنا لا، دائما معانا، الدورات كلها ما شاء الله معانا. حقيقه احنا محظوظين جدا بوجودك معنا دكتور، شكرا جزيلا.
الله يخليك،
يحفظك يا رب، يحفظك ربي. طبعا انا ما انسى الشباب كلهم اللي موجودين خلف الكواليس، لان اليوم اخر يوم فراح اذكرهم كلهم. دكتور عمر موفق، المعاون العلمي، يعني اللي دائما معنا بالضبط، استاذ محمد عبد الملك، استاذ فرهاد، دكتور فرهاد، استاذ ماجد. لا ما راح انسى الكل. لا ما راح انسى الكل، راح اذكر الكل دكتور هسه ان شاء الله. دكتور فرهاد، استاذ ماجد، استاذ محمد عبد الملك، اكيد ست مروه المصممه مالتنا، كرم، محمد حسان، منو عندنا بعد استاذ فارس اللي بالاخير دخل وسوى لنا الكتب الرسميه، شكرا جزيلا. الدكتور احمد فتاح اللي ساعدنا مع انه هو ما بلجنا. اي احد من الموجودين، اخاف انا ما ذكرت، دعمنا. ست انفال اللي كانت تبعث لنا المنشورات مرات بدون ما تكون بلجنا. الكادر اللي كان يساعدنا مع انه هو ما بلجنا، انا اشكره كثير. بلى دكتور، عيني دكتور. نسيت احد؟ نسيت احد دكتور؟ لا. الو.
المحاضرين كذلك، كل المحاضرين
لا طبعا والمحاضرين اللي قدموا افضل ما عندهم، انا كثير ممنونة لهم وشاكرة انه هم انطوا يعني عادة بالضبط، واللي شاركوا معنا حقيقة، واللي خاصة انه احنا صارت كثيرين، انا حسب معلوماتي اكو من يتابع دوراتنا وورشاتنا ويحرص على انه يحضرها. يعني حقيقة انا ممنونة جدا منهم، شاكرة لدعمهم إلنا. حضورهم كان اكبر دعم، حضورهم كان سبب انه يخلينا نستمر ونظل يعني ننطي بعد وندور افضل مادة علمية. الكل شكرا جزيلا. اي احد يعني اخاف انا ما ذكرت احد، اخاف لاي سبب نسيت اسم احد، اي احد ولو ساهم بشيء بسيط ويانا، ولو الكل ساهمت باشياء عظيمه. حقيقه انا كثير ممنونه من عندهم، كليه الهندسه، مو انا، كليه الهندسه جدا ممنونه من عندهم وشاكرتهم، شاكرين تعاونهم معنا، المحاضرين كلهم.
ممكن سؤال؟ بارك الله فيكم ست.
الجواب ايه استاذ ايمن، الله يحفظك.
انا من جامعه كركوك، والله نتمنى تسوون ورش بس على امور مثلا بالقسم الهندسه الميكانيكيه، على مسار سي اف دي
تخصصيه،
على
صحيح
تخصصيه، يعني خلينا نقول والله هي هم نستفيد شويه وهم من شهاده حقيقه، يعني مواضيع تستحق القعده في ساعتين عليه، يعني حبذا لو انتم
والله ممكن
العفو بس لو اكمل بس انتم جامعه اقدم من جامعه كركوك، وعندكم دكاتره وعندكم كادر اقوى حقيقه، يعني انا بس اقول يعني حبذا لو تسوون ندوات او ورش او دورات على مواضيع تخصصيه، وبارك الله بكم.
والله ان شاء الله يسمعون، يعني الاقسام عندنا كلها ما تقصر، كلهم ناويين اصلا. يعني اكيد هسه فتح عندنا ماده جديده او اسلوب جديد للمشاركه اللي هو الاسلوب الاونلاين. هذا يعني حتى لو انتهت ان شاء الله يا ربي تنتهي ازمه كورونا ورجعنا، اعتقد هذا الباب راح يظل مفتوح، واكيد راح تبدي الاقسام العلميه تسوي دورات اكثر تخصصيه. كل قسم يبدي يشتغل بالمواضيع التخصصيه، والمشتركين اكيد راح يشرفنا انه يكونوا من كل جامعات العراق.
سابقا شفت الباب الاونلاين لو يبقى حتى ورا كورونا، بس شنو، بس لو خلينا نقول السيطره على خلينا نقول الحقيقه على الحقيقه، يعني واحد يقعد بشكل حقيقي، مو يعني هو مو صادق بس يدور شهاده. هاي لو تم دراسه على الموضوع شلون نسيطر على هالموضوع، بحيث من واحد يلقي محاضره شلون يعرف ان المقابل قاعد، يعني ما مدى يغش يعني.
والله انا
هاي الباب تدري شنو العفو، هذا الباب الاونلاين اسهل من القعده. هاي القعده مال القاعات مرات احنا عندنا محاضره مثلا، عندنا شغل بالكليه ويقولون لنا اكو دوره اكو كذا، احنا ما عندنا مجال. بس هنا ممكن يكون بالليل، ممكن يكون باوقات فراغنا. حقيقه بس المساله وين؟ المساله انه شلون نعرف المقابل من قاعد هو صحيح قاعد، يعني مو بس من اجل المشاركه. بارك الله فيك.
بالضبط. يعني هذه انا هسه ادخل يعني دورات دكتور بير اكو اللي يسموه عيني.
بس أرد على الأخ اللي هسه، احنا بالنسبة لنا هذا جهد نقدمه خدمة للكل، اللي يحب يستفاد فهو موجود، واللي يحب بس يجي ياخذ هذه الورقة مال المشاركة، اعتقد لا تزيد ولا تنقص. يعني هو شنو راح يجمع ايش راح يسوي بيه. بالنسبة لنا جهد احنا نقدمه للناس حتى اللي تريد تستفاد. اما احنا ما نقدر نجبر تقعد تستفاد انت لا. هذه يعني هذا تتبع الشخص متى يعني مدى جديته بالتعامل مع هذه الندوات.
شكرا بارك الله فيك. شكرا جزيلا.
تمام. خلاص ننهي اعتقد ان شاء الله. ماكو احد عنده شيء معنا؟ ماكو حد عاتب علينا؟
السلام عليكم.
السلام ورحمه الله وبركاته. وعليكم السلام. الحمد لله ماشي الحال. اهلا وسهلا.
معاكم عباس ابو جامعه موسان اللي دائما يدخل عندك في المداخلات.
يا هلا بيك والله، بس شفت الصوره عرفت خلاص يعني.
حلوه القلب الدكتوره والله. هذا الخبر بعثنا انه اخر دوره او اخر ورشه هذه. يعني ما نتمنى ان تنتهي الورش. جامعه الموصل يعني اطالبكم مطالبه انا اليوم باسم الاخوه، باسم الصداقه، باسم علاقه الجامعات بين الميثاق
ممكن رابط التسجيل.
والفائده جدا عظيمه اللي استفاديناها منكم حقيقه. فنتمنى ان تستمرون بالدورات
رابط التسجيل ترى ما سجلنا.
العفو بس اكو احدهم كان يدخل. انتظر هسه انزل لك رابط التسجيل. ايه تفضل استاذ عباس كمل ما اشكال.
نعم دكتور. يعني والله يعني اطالبكم مطالبه اخويه، لانه والله العظيم حقيقه استفادينا فائده كبيره. ايش قد كنت يعني انا اطلع خارج البيت، لكن يعني بدك متابع اول وقت الى اخر وقت. الحمد لله فائده جدا جليله. واشكر الجميع، الدكاتره، كل الاساتذه، يعني كل القائمين خلف الكواليس، حضرتي دكتور بيان، دكتور عدي، كل الدكاتره اللي ساهموا بالورش. يعني والله اجاده كامله وكامله. أشكرهم جزيل الشكر.
والله شهادتك هذه جديات نعتز فيها جدا، فرحتنا جدا. احنا دائما بنسمع انه اكو اساتذه او زملاء لنا في جامعات في العراق كله يستفادون من شيء نقدمه. جديات هذا بالنسبه لنا اكبر مكافاه. يعني غايتنا بالبدايه وبالنهايه، وقالها دكتور بيار، احنا غايتنا انه نقدم شيء نقدر من خلاله انه ننفع يعني ننفع ابناء بلدنا اكيد بالدرجه الاولى، وكل من يحب يدخل وكل من يحب يشارك. يعني احنا هسه الحمد لله دوراتنا انا ابدي اسوي تشيكينج، دوراتنا يدخلون بها حتى من البلدان العربيه، من الوطن العربي. فاحنا جدا سعيدين انه نقدر نقدم شيء ولو بسيط بهاي الازمه.
لا قدمت الكثير دكتور.
الله يحفظكم، الله يحفظكم، وجدا سعيدين
يا رب يتقبل طاعاتكم واعمالكم. شكرا دكتور.
مرحبا،
حياك الله دكتور.
الله يحفظك.
حياك الله على راسك دكتور، يبارك فيك
ويحفظك. احنا بالنسبه لنا في هالوقت هذه الدورات يعني النهايه مالتها بسبب رمضان وهذه، بس وراها ان شاء الله راح نبدي الدورات، راح تكون يعني دورات يعني علميه. كل قسم راح يسوي دورة على الشغلات العلمية اللي تخصه، وراح يكون مبرمجة أكثر ومنظم أكثر إن شاء الله. احنا هذه سويناها يعني في الوقت اللي الأساتذة يحتاجون محاضرات على التعليم الأونلاين وعلى الشغلات اللي تفرض الحدث يفرضوا علينا. أما البقية راح تصير يعني دورات تعليم مستمر مثل خليه يقول في مجالات العلم. وإن شاء الله احنا دائما في خدمة جامعات العراق كلها إن شاء الله.
لا العفو دكتور، كلكم خير وبركة وما قصرتوا، وحضرتك يعني من أعلام العراق. الله يبارك فيك، شكرا جزيلا وجزاك الله على المداخلة، وايد طولت. الله يخليك.
ممنون.
ممنون.
إن شاء الله ماكو شيء، خلصنا نقفل. ما حد عنده شيء؟ اكو شات دا يصير، ما اعرف، خليني اجرب اقرا الشات. دكتورة شهادات مندلي بعثوها لين انا ما وصلت لي وكنت موجودة. تمام، اللي ما وصلته وكان موجود فقط يبعث لي رسالة يكتب بيها الاي دي اللي دخل بيه على البرنامج. انا هذه مصرة، يعني قافلة، يعني لا حد يزعل من عندي. مندلي وما بعدها انا دا اشيك الاسماء اللي داخل اي دي فقط هو اللي اكمل له هي، لسبب بسيط جدا. هاي حتى اضمن حقوق اللي دا يحضرون. احنا دا نسوي كتب ادارية تأييد. الكتاب اذا يصير بالاعداد ما طبيعية اكيد ما راح يصدر. لما ما يصدر يعني المسؤول عندنا راح يقول لك انا ما اصدر هيك كتاب، هيك اعداد ما منطقيه. ولهذا انا حتى احفظ حقوقكم انتم اللي حضرتوا مصره انه هذا ينعمل. لطفا ابعثي لي رساله، اكتبي لي الاي دي اللي دخلتي بيه على البرنامج نفسه او الايميل، لانه عاده اول ما تدخلون يقول لك اكتب